The quest for a teaching and learning environment that is conducive to academic and intellectual growth is perhaps a never-ending undertaking for dedicated and committed educators and knowledge managers like all of us. For many years, we all know that institutions of higher learning and our own universities have trained its academic staff, plus you and me, on the use of various innovations and techniques in the efficient and effective delivery of instruction. Likewise, of equal importance is the creation of technology-enhanced and technology-mediated learning environments to enable and empower our learners. Before the advent and popularity of digital technology, analog radio and television were the media forms used for educational purposes. The educational paradigms of tele-education and tele-learning pertain to the use of these media forms for quite a long time. The prefix tele pertained to telecommunications. Today, these so-called traditional media, also referred to as electronic media and legacy media, are still used for educational purposes, but are converged with digital technology to maximize their use and reach. Let's reacquaint ourselves with the educational paradigm of tele-learning. Tele-learning is not something new. It is under the umbrella of tele-education, which is an educational paradigm that is concerned with the delivery of education at a distance and from a distance, and emerged with the technology of radio in the 1920s and that of television in later years. It makes use of analog technology to support and maximize teaching and learning that meets two basic needs: content support and transport. Through technology, teachers and students who are spatially and temporally separated are brought together without making them physically present with each other. Analog radio and television has the ability to help teachers overcome the impediments of time and space to allow communication between the components of learning, namely who learns, who teaches, and the content. The term tele-learning comprises two component words: tele, from the Greek word tulove, meaning far off or at a distance, and paideia, for learning and education. The tele component of the term also refers to the use of telecommunications and distinguishes it from distance learning, which could be paper-based, as in correspondence courses, through the mail, or using digital technology. Collis, in 1998, defines tele-learning as using telematics for learning-related purposes. In its broader sense, telematics is the joining of two sciences: telecommunications, a branch of technology, including phone lines and cables, and informatics, such as computer systems. Today, the terms tele-learning and tele-education are no longer used. The delivery and receipt of learning from a distance is now known as distance education, which uses the innovations of digital technology. Let's explore educational radio or radio-based education in the Philippines. The historiography of radio in the Philippines is quite interesting and complex. However, historical accounts point to 1922, when a Mrs. Redgrave, an American, made a test broadcast with a 5-watt transmitter from Nichols Air Base. Carol Atkinson, in 1941, writes about the extensive use of radio in the Philippines in 1929. She states that the Philippine Islands, beginning about 1929, have made increasingly effective use of radio to educate and make citizenship conscious the numerous tribal groups of the island. It has been especially useful in developing a common language. In 1929, the Vice Governor of the Philippines told of the possibilities of using radio as an educational tool on the islands, and he stressed the special need for its use in language instruction, which is English. Because English, it was stated, was being taught in all schools in the Philippines, but the teachers were removed about 4 generations from the American language. The initial use for radio was for business in the Philippines. Pre-war radio stations were owned by department stores. They used them to advertise their merchandise. The motivation behind pre-advertising stations or advertising of companies other than the station owners began in 1932. This paved the way for the development and widespread distribution of transistor radio receivers in the late 1950s. Then later, radio was vigorously explored for educational purposes, specifically with teaching Filipinos to speak English. Originally, American teachers taught Philippine teachers to speak English. Some of these Philippine teachers became trainers of teachers in the normal schools, and they taught English to their students. Some of these students, in turn, became teachers in normal schools, and they taught a new group of teachers who in turn are teaching the present core of prospective teachers. Realizing the situation of the poor quality of English at that time, the governor planned to present correct English speech by means of radio. However, it was as early as 1932 that saw radio use for education through a program that contained the news for the day, 1 or 2 prepared short lectures prepared by the Extension Department of a university that focused on education, health, agriculture, forestry, and science, and an hour of music. Tax funds supported such programs, as well as government subsidies derived from radio registration fees and commercial product sponsors. By 1941, Atkinson writes that news and information are broadcast mornings and evenings in Tagalog, English, and Spanish. Educational programs also are conducted by the University of the Philippines. Radio is playing a very important part in the promotion of local industries. Weekly programs are broadcast to acquaint the people with different local products, their prices, and usefulness. The development of transistor radio gave a boost to radio's use nationwide. Transistor radio came in 1959, and its spread and popularity was fast. The transistor revolution in the Philippines began in 1959, when CARE, an NGO, donated a few thousand transistors to the barrios. Many barrios in the Philippines do not have electricity at that time. The transistor, in some cases, has replaced the usual method of getting information by word of mouth. This method was time-consuming, and it often took 2 months for information to sift to the barrios from the urban centers. Villagers are quickly accepting its soap operas, balagtasan, advice to the lovelorn programs, and music fair. The radio seems to strengthen their concept of the big city as a festive, unfriendly place by presenting news of crime accidents and family problems. And the rest is history. Maurice Imhoff, a professor at Northwestern University in Chicago, writes about radio's productive history in development, particularly in non-formal education related to other development sectors such as health and agriculture. He writes that radio's strengths and its cost-effectiveness can be used effectively to meet expanding educational needs in developing countries without a loss in the quality of education. He points out salient characters of radio that make it a good instructional and educational medium. First, it encourages and perhaps requires listeners to concentrate their attention and to use their imaginations. One of radio's unique strengths is that it provides a theater of the mind. Second, radio has immediacy. It can both convey events immediately without a time lag resulting from print, and at the same time, it can create the feeling of being there. It can make the listener feel that he or she is a part of the action at any time and in any place. This is an important feature in education, where one attempts to focus and stimulate mental activity. Third, radio has a special advantage in countries where there is a strong oral tradition. In a sense, it extends this tradition and incorporates new kinds of information that can be passed along orally. Well-designed educational radio programs can both preserve the oral heritage and develop new traditions by radio. Fourth, radio can easily be combined with person-to-person communication, visual modes, or both. Imhoff believed that radio-based education can improve educational quality and relevance. It lowers educational costs and it improves the access to education, especially in the rural areas. In the Philippines, radio was a tool for business and entertainment. Later, it evolved to be a medium for information, news, interview programs, discussion forums, and other thought-stimulating programs. Professor Coco Trinidad of the Institute of Mass Communication of the University of the Philippines at that time wrote that educational broadcast was started in 1959 by the Bureau of Public Schools and the Philippine Broadcasting Service. Educational programs were broadcast to Baguio, Cebu, Davao, and in the Mindanao State University. However, there was no description on what kind of educational programs were produced during the period. With the advent of digital technology, it seems that analog radio is no longer relevant, especially in the delivery of instruction and learning. However, analog radio still finds relevance and can stand on its own side by side with digital radio. In the 2020 report on radio-based education in the Philippines by the World Bank, it states that educational radio has been proven effective at supporting teacher-led training and has many different forms, and that there are three broad categories of radio-based instruction. First, there is classical educational radio broadcasts. This is the delivery of audio-based learning content that students listen to on the radio. Examples are stories and pre-recorded lectures. Second, there is interactive radio instruction, the delivery of audio-based learning content on the radio in which presenters guide facilitators and learners through interactive activities. Third, interactive audio instruction, the delivery of audio-based learning content with interactive activities for listeners to complete distributed on SD cards, MP3 players, and CDs. The report enumerates the factors that needs consideration when thinking about using radio-based instruction. They are the following. The first one is distribution costs, subject selection, quality criteria, repurposing content, supporting materials, and developing iteratively or repeatedly. So, in detail, distribution costs will talk about what are considered in script and curriculum development, training radio presenters and curriculum specialists, program production, including recording, studio setup, including the procurement of equipment, and also considering quality assurance. Quality assurance needs to start early. If you find a recording that does not meet standards, you should rewrite the script and re-record. In other words, you should build quality assurance as early as the script writing stage. If you have already recording lessons, you can use this content as an opportunity to obtain feedback from learners and to improve the quality of materials that you will develop in the future. Subject selection pertains to what is needed to be focused on. So we focus on core writing skills because radio-based education can support students who are learning to write, as the lack of visual imagery encourages them to think about telling stories in word. So next is we consider core language skills like English and Filipino. Study the curriculum and re-examine and review the core subjects that need improvement. Not all subjects can be supported by radio because the visual imagery aspect is absent. Through sound, radio can enhance listening skills. Then we talk about quality criteria. The educational institution may consider the following in producing radio-based education. Structured broadcast, presenters give a short introduction to a concept. Also, they model and apply this idea, and they allow listeners to test their understanding. Interactive activities talk about broadcasts should involve simple interactive activities and especially activities that involve movement to support active learning. Should be suitably paced. Presenters should speak slowly to ensure children or its learners to follow content and incorporate mental breaks into broadcasts. You should also think about appropriate choice of language. In marginalized communities, learners may not speak the national language, and broadcasts may need to cater to the needs of other dialects or regional languages. Then you should have sequenced routine. Lesson schedules should follow a regular routine to support the development of educational habit. When we talk about repurposing content, this is an approach that can be taken as adapting scripts to save time and cost. So repurposing and adapting existing content can reduce time and cost. It is associated also with content development and quality assurance. Many content repositories contain scripts, teacher guidelines materials, and audio files that have already been proven effective. The means of adaptation include we can cut content to shorter episodes, create recording new segments, swapping out portions of an existing broadcast with new recordings, translating and recording scripts in a new language, and alternatively, you can redesign non-audio interventions for radio delivery. If you have concerns about the quality and consistency of script writing, you can start and try the initiative using repurposed material while script writers are being trained. When we talk about supporting materials, quality programming entails more than audio recordings. Effective radio education programs require multiple components: content delivery plan, teacher guidance materials, high-quality scripts, paper-based materials for students like workbooks, wraparound materials like short message service, and telephone. When we talk about develop iteratively, in situations where the needs of students and teachers are uncertain, you should 1. Start small, 2. Trial, 3. Assess and learn, 4. Adapt and redesign, and 5. Build out. Now, let's talk about educational TV or TV-based education in the Philippines. 1953 saw the nascence of television in the Philippines with the opening of DZAQ-TV, Channel 3 of Alto Broadcasting System in Manila. The station was owned by Antonio Quirino, the brother of the incumbent Philippine president, who was set to run for re-election the following year. The use of television in the Philippines began in the early 1960s with a 30-minute live telecast entitled Education on TV with Father James Reuter on Channel 9. Significant events followed suit, such as the National Science Development Board or NSDB produced a televised college course in 1961 entitled Physics in the Atomic Age. Then there was the creation of the University of the Philippines Committee on Educational Television in cooperation with Radio Mindanao Network in 1963 and the Ateneo Closed Circuit Television Project in 1964. Television created a wave of interest despite the fact that not everyone owned a television receiving set. The need to exploit the potential of television as an education medium added to radio was population growth that results in the increase of student population in both basic and higher education. Also, there was the concern for a shortage of teachers. Outside the administrative concerns is the growing body of knowledge that students must master in school. Educational television, or ETV, is a descriptive term that covers two broad categories, namely as educational TV, or the use of television which caters generally to children and an adult audience, and instructional TV, or ITV, which is the systematic use of television as part of the school curriculum. Educational television takes many forms, and the main objective being the production of programs that seek to convey information or teach skills. There is a shadow area that comprises programs that are both entertaining and educational, such as dramatic presentations or documentary films. Educational programs can be broadcast over ETV stations, for instance, university-based ETV stations, or it can be broadcast over commercial stations, which provide airtime. Programs classified as educational do not follow a school curriculum and are usually watched for non-credit purposes, meaning that you do not get a grade for watching it. Instructional television, on the other hand, or ITV, is the production of a series of telecourses that students can take credit and are integrated into a school curriculum. These courses are either complete course offerings, in which case they usually go on twice a week, like enrichment courses that are televised also less frequently. When using ETV or ITV, the programs have to have a schedule that students can follow and set their everyday schedule around it. Moreover, the teacher or instructor must create follow-up sessions with their students. The basic question at the time was, is television the answer? As always, when an innovation is introduced, resistance emerges. Teachers at the time had the fear that television would replace them in the classroom. However, the idea for the innovation is that television is not a teacher. It merely is a conveyor of learning. So we have to think about the advantages of using television-based learning. First one is the quality of indefinite extension. TV extends the teaching competencies of the teacher. There is greater economy of time because it can reach more than 30 students at one time. Second, there is sound amplification. Television sound can be amplified. Also, it provides the advantage of audio explanation that goes with each demonstration. Third, it is a visual medium. Through camera angles used and through production techniques, a televised instruction can become interesting. Also, the television camera can magnify details, which can benefit student learning. The fourth one is, it is a dynamic medium. Television capitalizes on action, which makes it dynamic and attractive. Fifth, it is immediate and personal. In a televised instruction, there can be a studio teacher, and he or she addresses the camera directly, which in turn can make the watcher feel that he or she is directly addressing him or her. Sixth, it is selective and efficient. Tele-lessons are more carefully prepared. Creative techniques in writing the lesson and in producing the material given to the teachers and the production team. Then, television can bring students to a wealth of experience and information beyond the conventional means of classroom instruction. The camera can create magnified images. Using pre-taped materials, they can be integrated into the lesson. There could be a production team who can record events outside the classroom and bring them into the tele-lesson. However, one must know how to produce a television material, or the school can engage professionals who can work together with the teachers to create tele-lessons. Moreover, the school must invest in equipment that will make possible tele-learning through television, such as equipping classrooms with television monitors and creating a central room with equipment to play back recorded lessons. Also, teachers can be trained in using television monitors and playback systems. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention.